somewhere. McGilvray?
Here.
Jackson?
Here.
Nelson?
Here.
Cavell?
Here.
Gingell is absent with notice. Kuhn?
Here.
Lubes?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Please join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item is approval of the minutes from March 1st. I have a motion by Commissioner Cavell, support from Commissioner McGilvray. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. The next item is approval of the agenda.
Aye, Michael.
I don't see any changes to the agenda. Who would like to make a motion? I have a motion by Commissioner Hoffman, support from Commissioner Jackson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our agenda is approved. Next item is public comment. Our first public comment relating to items on the agenda. Is there any public who wishes to comment on the agenda? Welcome.
Thank you.
Back.
Hello.
Aye.
Thought I heard you were here with, absent with notice. Did I hear wrong?
I was not absent with notice today.
Okay, good. I thought that's what I heard when I was sitting over there, but who knows? I haven't had my quota of coffee again today. So, thank you, Commissioners. My name is Catherine Kennedy. I'm here from Lake Orion. And I'm actually thankful to see we have a lot of the sheriff's proposals included, including the overtime acceptance. I do have a lot of questions on a couple of the items. The Policing Innovations Initiative grant, I don't understand what that means exactly. I'm sure it's a change. I'm sure it is looking at all things that have gone on across the country. One question for me is, has there been a complaint against our sheriff's department ever about the issues that you're talking about here? Because that's one thing. I've never heard anything bad about our particular sheriffs. I think they're very exemplary in how they've managed things, and I was quite impressed on how they handled the Oxford crisis. And I would tell you they were the only one of the citizens' representatives that handled it well. We'll leave it at that. Another question I have is, why are we changing, and what exactly are we changing relative to the Corrections Department and their relationship in scope of services is how it's called, with the Oakland Community Health Network? I don't quite understand. They did reference Step Forward. I know that's for abuse victims. That's a positive. I do know there's a lot of criminal issues related to drugs and other issues. But what I observed throughout my lifetime, it's the same people that are repeating the same things over and over again. So we have actually adopted a policy lately that says, okay, we'll just give you another chance. In fact, the Clean Slate Act, I contacted Lansing back in October of 2020, and they did not have any language in that document that prohibits it from being used by non-citizens. So that's one thing I would actually request the sheriffs start taking track of, or maybe we can FOIA, maybe it's already there. How many of the people that applied for the Clean Slate Act in the state of Michigan were citizens, and how many were non-citizens that were brought here with criminal records and allowed to expunge them before they apply for citizenship? And I clarified that from the Legislative Bureau in writing in email back in October of 2020. It's probably my first email I ever managed to accomplish after my illness. So that has me concerned, and I see there's a lot of HUD items on here. HUD is a federal department that's required only to give money to citizens. I checked with the Federal Register, which is where all the federal laws are really kept. So all the media commotion and all the different people telling you, oh yeah, we can give the money here, we can give the money there. No, actually the law says the opposite. So I would implore everyone, look to the source document of whatever you're looking at. If it's a Senate bill, go to the Senate.com and look it up. Because what they're telling you in the media is often the opposite of what the document says. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, Sandra Carlian from Novi. I'd like to comment on the public comment portion. If there isn't a rule to inhibit this, and there shouldn't be, I suggest immediate, as immediate as possible, activation of the microphone portion. Apparently, there's someone that is joining us remotely that is a citizen, and they do not have the same option as all of the other people have that are phoning in and viewing this live stream. And I would like for the citizens who are unable to get to this meeting to be able to make their comments and to be able to present ideas to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? All right, this portion of public comment is closed. We move on to communications, and there are none. Our first item on the regular agenda is from the Sheriff's Office. It's a grant acceptance with the Department of Natural Resources for the fiscal year 2022 Off-Road Vehicle Law Enforcement Program. So I have a motion by Commissioner Gingell, support from Commissioner Hoffman, and welcome to,
Christine.
welcome
Hey,
to
good
you.
morning.
Thank you.
Major Chris Wondrak, Sheriff's Office. Appreciate you all for having me here. Our first thing is a grant acceptance from the Department of Natural Resources. This is for $15,000 to provide ORV, off-road vehicle enforcement with our parks, and this money will be used to provide salaries and benefits for the deputies.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Well, you are quite prepared. No questions.
All right.
Prompt the vote, please.
Gingell?
Yes.
We have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Motion carries. Major, don't go away.
Oh,
Our next
we have
item-
5 things here. I'm ready to go.
Our next item is a resolution extension of the temporary increase in rate of overtime pay to reduce employee mandatory overtime items. And I have a motion by Commissioner Hoffman, support from Commissioner Gingell.
Okay, and I do have Gaya, I forgot to mention, she called in to help answer questions
Oh,
if we have
thank
them.
you.
All right, this is an extension of our double time program that we've been having on the weekends due to our manpower issues, so our deputies aren't being forced on the weekends. So this is just a continuation. We like to continue this through June and hopefully end it. We have a academy group ready to graduate. They'll be through their training, so we should be able to be stabilized and continue on without the double overtime.
Thank you. How many, do you know how many people are in the academy group?
12 right now, and then we have 17 new backgrounds going out for the next academy. We're hoping to start in April, so we're starting to stabilize a little bit.
All right, thank you.
That's good.
Any other questions? I'll prompt the vote, please.
Gingell?
Yes.
Kuhn?
It did say.
Yes. We have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries, thank you. Our next item is a grant acceptance with the U.S. Department of Justice for the fiscal year 2021 Bulletproof Vest Partnership. I have a motion by Commissioner Hoffman, support from Commissioner Gingell.
All right.
Ready.
Next item, this is to accept $21,437 from the Department of Justice to help pay for our bulletproof vest for our officers. This grant covers half the cost of a vest. Right now, we pay about $500 per vest per officer, and they have a 5-year life expectancy. Last year, we purchased 200 vests, and so every year we purchase between 150 to 200, and this money will help pay for some of that cost.
Thank you. Questions? Prompt the vote, please.
Gingell?
Yes.
You have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. We are moving along quite nicely.
I'm
Thank you,
trying.
everybody.
Good job,
Good roll,
Chairperson.
man.
Our next item from the Sheriff's Department is the grant application with the Office of National Drug Control Policy for the 2023 High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Program. I have a motion from Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner Jackson. So,
All right, this
Thanks
is
for
our
sitting there.
annual grant. We do this every year. And this is for our narcotics enforcement team, which is a multi-agency team. We have 14 other agencies throughout Oakland County involved in our narcotics team. Currently, there's 26 members of the team. And this money, this $132,000 will be used to pretty much pay for overtime for criminal investigations. And also, another additional $17,000 will be used to purchase cell phones. And this money comes from our Michigan HIDA board, which is funded through the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency.
thank you. Questions? Prompt the vote, please.
You guys are batting 1,000.
Hey, I'll come here every time, right?
Gingell?
Yes.
You have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries, thank you. All right, next item from the Sheriff's Department is the grant application with the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan for the Community Policing Innovations Initiative Grant. So I have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner Hoffman.
Okay, last item. This is a brand-new grant application. All right, and we're trying to get close to $700,000 to help do a community policing and education program to citizens. I have right here Lieutenant Paul Workman, who oversees the program and the grant. He's here to explain it in more detail and answer any questions.
Thank you.
All right, so currently, the Sheriff's Office got a grant through the COPS program to do a community education series. We're doing that on Mondays for a 10-week span. There's leaders throughout the county that attend that program every Monday, and we talk about de-escalation, implicit bias, use of force, several topics that are important to society right now, with the goal of having common ideas, reform, things like that. This grant is an add-on, a supplement to that current program. So that program was going to run twice this fiscal year. So the second iteration of it will be in June. We would like this grant to supplement that starting also in June, and it will basically take that program out on the road. So instead of me hosting classes at the Sheriff's Department for a select few people that I can handle there, we will take these same topics, hold events in communities throughout the county, not just in our contracted areas, but throughout the county, and present these classes to them and allow public to come in, do a meet and greet with command staff, ask questions, talk about some of the important issues that we're facing across the country. We'll also set up driving simulators so that people can experience what it's like to be in police vehicles responding to calls. We'll have virtual simulator portable so that they can go through some scenarios and see what it's like to be on some of these calls. We'll have recruiting tables there that represent the Sheriff's Department, corrections, road patrol, dispatch, so that we can have a more diverse recruiting base. It will just be a function that brings people together and to talk about ideas and where we can go forward.
That sounds amazing. I think we want that to happen in all of our communities, so get ready.
Great.
Thank you. Commissioner Gingell?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, one, I think it's important, right? Because you're trying to go out, build relationships and trust in the
Yes, sir.
communities with the citizens and the Sheriff's Department. And I was gonna ask about recruiting, so just to make sure I understand. So each time you go out into the community, you get people engaged, you'd have a direct path to say, come join us, here's how?
Yeah, so the goal or the concept is we would set up, let's just say we pick a school, Pontiac High School. We would use their facility, they allow us to come in on a weekend. We would set up all of these stations, the simulators, the Virtua. We'd have a recruiting table, so I'd have representatives, our recruiting sergeant there, would have somebody from dispatch, somebody from corrections, somebody from the road patrol. Everything would be laid out for them, so when they came, they could talk to us about the positions. We would instruct them how to apply, provide them the testing equipment they may need, because, there's different stuff for corrections and road patrol. So we'd give them all that information on the spot. A one-stop shop is what I'm thinking with this concept. Again, meet with some command staff, and we'll do that on a rotating basis, so it's not the same people every time with the same message. But let's say our topic will be use of force. Well, then I can bring in SIU lieutenant or an SIU sergeant to explain how we do investigations, so that the community can then ask direct questions and get a better understanding and dispel some of the myths or things they may or may not know about investigations. So again, different topics, different events. In the grant, we're talking about 1 to 2 a month in locations all across the county.
Yes.
So I don't want to slow it down, you guys are definitely on a roll, but if we could over time, like, just kind of keep track of how many recruitments come from these events.
100%.
I don't tie them together, I mean, I see it as a needed service, as a sunk cost, but if in fact we can get recruits coming in through something that was essentially a cost-only mechanism, I mean, that's like a good thing for the taxpayers, right?
100%. We can do that. We have a recruiting sergeant. Part of the grant is incorporating a TTA from the initiative program. Their goal is going to be to track all the data, the feedback coming out, the topics, the recruiting events, so we can that's a no-brainer. We can do that.
Perfect. Thank you, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kuhn?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This training sounds so important, and I certainly know that we're all very supportive of it. On a slightly different path, though, I was pretty disappointed that we didn't get the training proposal, the 4 new officers to deal with the threats to children and to schools. What's the status of that proposal?
Currently, right now, we're still getting support letters for the program. The sheriff feels that this is a very important program for the whole county. Because of the Oxford incident, he wants to be able to go to all the schools within the county to make sure that they're all trained, and then to put on a lessons learned presentation to other law enforcement, first responders, community leaders, to make sure that we're all on the same page and our children are protected.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it is urgent, as the sheriff's office indicated before. I mean, the increase in threats, you know it better than anyone, it has been just massive, and we need to have those added personnel.
Well, after the incident, our computer crimes unit got bombarded with, requests to look at cell phones, because when a threat's made, we go out there, we investigate it, we'll seize the phone and try to, obtain evidence, but, we closed down schools right after the accident incident because of all the threats, copycat threats coming from around the country. And it's very taxing on our computer crimes unit. We have 4 investigators to deal with it, just that portion, but what about all the other crime that's being committed by computers and cell phones? It's crazy.
Thank you, Major, and thank you, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you. Sure. Any other questions? Commissioner Cavell, followed by Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you. You're getting too many softballs, so I'm going to go deep here with
Okay,
you guys. Okay.
let's go.
No. I just wanted to know more about with the Innovations Grant. 2 questions. The first one might be for Gaia. This is from the Community Foundation. Is this the pot of money that the county executive set aside in the last fiscal year, $1 million? Is that same pot of money?
Yes, I believe it's a portion of it. So we were actually contacted by Barb Hankey, the new director of public services, and we worked with her.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Cool. And then the second thing, it speaks in the application about truth and reconciliation. Can you speak more to that, Lieutenant?
As far as the public events, so again, you'll see with the events that I'm holding now on Mondays. I just held one yesterday.
Oh, can you tell us about that?
So yesterday we talked about use of force. So, and again, I don't want to take up a ton of time, but I do want to answer the question. So we talk about the community's perceptions of rates or use of force incidents versus what may be presented in the media, and I don't care what side that is. and then what our data may show. And so we go through all of that. And the idea is that it's open, it's not ideologically based, we just have deep discussions about it. And the whole point is to listen to each other and get through some of that, what we believe is truth based on our perception versus what somebody else may believe as truth in their perception. It doesn't mean either person is wrong, it's just either person is bringing baggage to that discussion, right? So I'm not here to convince you that I'm right, and you're not here to convince me that I'm right, but we do need to kind of find that common ground and get the truths out based on those perceptions. So that's kind of what we did yesterday. We talked about rates of use of force, how law enforcement is involved with that, the statistics on how many law enforcement officers were killed, how many people of this race were killed, how many people, and then we focused in on Oakland County itself and went over some of the data there. So that's what it is. It's a discussion every week about tough topics in an environment where both sides can present like not an argument, but a discussion, and then we hash out, and then we always at the end of every discussion talk about, okay, now that we've said all this, what's our way forward? What are ideas that you have to go forward? Here's my ideas to go forward, and we kind of do that every week.
And if you don't mind, Chair.
One more.
Okay, so what are some of the other classes you have coming up? Because you're saying they're
Next week we will talk about, I'd have to get my calendar, I'll just name some of the topics we have coming up still. We have a whole section on de-escalation, what that means from a sheriff's deployment or a law enforcement perspective, how we de-escalate or how we train it versus the reality of trying to de-escalate mental health calls. We're going to talk about law enforcement training, right? Because people say, well, they should just be trained more, or they get enough training, or whatever the case may be. So we're going to talk about exactly what that means. What do we get trained on? What are we required to do by the state? What are we required to do to keep our license? We'll talk about the training. We're going to have a whole week on, and by week I mean 3 hours on a Monday night. We're going to talk about implicit bias and regular bias, stuff that's not implicit. Talk about biases and where we can fix or look at perceptions based on both sides of that argument. So those are 3 of the ones that are coming up still. We've already done a virtual day where they came in and did which I know you're familiar with. We did put them through simulations. They all loved it. We did it on a Saturday. Every single person spent an hour going through simulations. We've done human force or use of force, human performance limitations, how the body reacts to these situations based on force science. We spent a whole day on that. We did an introductory week. I think that was it so far, I can remember.
Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Jackson?
Thank you. So in the resolution, it states that this program is going to run independently of the COPS program. So this resolution brings forth more protected information for our sheriff-protected communities, right? The 12 communities that it names in the resolution.
Right. Because it was our grant and we were proposing it, obviously we focused in on the 12 communities that we are contracted with. That's not to say that we could not expand that program. And the reason we put independently is because it won't relate, we won't be covering the same topics on a Monday that we may be covering in an event, because it may not be what we think that area or that, right? Because different areas may have different perspective on things and may be interested in different topics. Right, so we're going to work all that out through the TTA. She's actually going to bring her expertise in community policing to kind of vet that and say, hey, here's where I think we should hold it, here's some of the topic ideas, and then we will have the final approval or discussion about what those classes will be.
So how many of the 12 shared protected communities are already participating in the federally funded COPS program that will get this additional service?
So there's several people from now, I'll say this, when we opened it up, for my first iteration of this 10-week class, I wanted community leaders. We didn't really open it up to the community because it was still getting vetted out. I'll be honest with you, I'm still working on classes every week. I'm still building material. I'm still looking up stats myself. I do that independently. So I wanted community leaders and I didn't want 40. So we have about 15 people that originally signed up. We had people from, the supervisor from Oxford had signed up. We had Walled Lake School superintendent sign up. We had several people from Pontiac, including Miss James, who's on the council there. She was there last night. We have some, for lack of better words, activist groups that run websites in the Pontiac area that are pretty influential are in there. We have somebody that works with our education system in Pontiac and other areas that actually came from Lansing or works for a company in Lansing. So it's kind of a wide range, but it is a small group, so we're not touching all of those 12 communities. I would probably say in general, well, and the supervisor had to drop out because he had COVID for quite a while, so he didn't come back in. We're probably looking at 2 or 3 communities right now that we serve in general. But the next group in June, when I start publishing the, for application to join, the goal was now to open it up more widely dispersed and then take people from communities from everywhere.
That's good news. Thank you.
So that's the goal.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, prompt the vote, please.
Kinjal?
Yes.
You have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thanks for-
support, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Take care.
Our next item from Public Services is Community Corrections, interlocal agreement amending the scope of services with the Oakland Community Health Network for implementing trauma-informed group programming within the Step Forward program. Who would like, I have a motion by Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner McGilvery. And we have Eric Schmidt here from OCHN to address this item. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Just a small correction. I'm Eric Schmidt. I'm the acting manager with Oakland County Community Corrections.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, and that's all right. We have an interlocal agreement where we are amending the scope of services, and that interlocal agreement is with the Oakland County Health Network, or OCHN. And so we've had an existing interlocal agreement between our 2 parties, where OCHN was providing mental health and substance abuse assessments embedded within community corrections. And what has changed is that criminally involved individuals with the Michigan Department of Corrections, or MDOC agents, and their populations have now been named a priority population for assessment services. And so they make those referrals for those substance abuse and mental health assessments direct. And so our service and our interlocal agreement is duplicative. So we have decided to change just the scope of services to start and build a trauma-informed group program, which will be in concert with our Step Forward program here at Community Corrections. And so the funding will remain the same amount, and from the same source. So the funding is coming from the Michigan Department of Corrections, our Office of Community Corrections grant that we receive annually. So there's no changes there and no changes to the interlocal agreement itself, except for just the scope of services. So that is the change that we brought before you today.
So Eric, the groups will be in the Troy site and the Pontiac site?
Yes, at our same 2 locations that are Troy and Pontiac sites.
And how many people will be involved in each group?
We will, once we get approval here, we will continue our talks with OCHN and their providers. But we see each group having a maximum of 15. We think that we will be able to fill them very quickly. And they will be gender specific at each site. So we'll have a minimum of 2 groups in the Troy site and 2 in the Pontiac site. We will likely scale this though.
Thank you. And are there any other questions? All right, prompt the vote, please.
Kinjal?
Yes.
You have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you all.
Our next item is from Health and Human Services, Health Division, grant acceptance with Oakland University for the Prescription for a Healthy Oakland Southeast Expansion Program. I have a motion from Commissioner Nelson, support from Commissioner Cavell, and we have Who do we have here? Stacy Smith?
Stacy Smith, yep, and Carrie. This is a subcontract with Oakland University to continue and expand the Prescription for a Healthy Oakland program. This subcontract is for a little over $27,000 and supports the creation of a part-time, non-eligible health educator 2 position.
Thank you. Are there questions about this position or part-time educator? All right, prompt the vote, please.
Gingell?
Yes.
We have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks for staying with us this morning. All right, our next item is from Health and Human Services Neighborhood and Housing Development Grant Acceptance with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the fiscal year 2021 Comprehensive Housing Counseling Program. We have a motion by Commissioner Cavell, support from Commissioner McGilvery, and we have Shane Bias here to address this issue. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this is a continuation of funding that we received for the last few years from the federal government to help supplement our housing counselors. We have 2 housing counselors and 1 housing counselor or supervisor, and they help citizens with everything from perhaps a senior citizen who's considering a reverse mortgage to a first-time home buyer to people who might be experiencing homelessness. And to assist them through those sometimes very complicated conversations. And so this is just another year in that additional funding source that goes to support and supplement some other funding sources from HUD and from through a CDBG grant and also from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority.
Thank you. Commissioner Gingell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. So as I read this, I read it as it's an extension of the existing home counseling services that we execute today. It stays in those same boundaries. It doesn't add other types of counseling, et cetera. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding that. It's really an extension of what we're doing in home counseling today. Is that right?
Correct. No new positions are being created and no expansion of services with the current funding that's being asked for.
Yeah, so if they're giving us free money and we can do it in a way this outlines to expand services, I mean, I'm assuming we'll take it, but I'd also say, not to be a rain cloud, but for those of us that were here that lived through 08, 09, 10, the foreclosure crisis, and you look at where we're at and what might be on the horizon with interest rates, inflation, and other things, this might be an area we want to be thinking more about over time here.
Thank you. Commissioner Jackson?
I totally concur with Commissioner Gingell on this because I did live through that those years, and our housing counselors were invaluable as far as helping people remain in their homes through a foreclosure tsunami. So yes, we will be paying closer attention, and I love the work that Sean and his area is doing in regards to this. And even looking at it in advance with the housing consortium that we have. And so I appreciate this, and I'm glad that we have these dollars. Anything we can do to help people stay in their homes or obtain homes and be able to maintain them and keep them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well said. Anything else? Prompt the vote, please.
Gingell?
Yes.
We have 8 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you, motion carries. Our last scheduled item on the agenda is from Health and Human Services, the Neighborhood and Housing Development Grant Acceptance with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the program year 2021 Home Investment Partnership, the American Rescue Plan Program, and administrative and planning funds. Who would like to make a motion? Motion by Commissioner Cavell, support from Commissioner McGilvery. All right, Shane, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. So this agreement that you have in front of us is for quote unquote home ARP funding. It's additional funding that was made available through the American Rescue Plan Act. However, it is not coming through through the Federal Treasurer's Office. It is coming via HUD, and as such, there's some different rules associated with this particular pot of money from ARPA. So it's going to, first of all, it's going to be available to us all the way through the end of 2030. And so it doesn't have the same timing as our regular ARPA funds. As well, there's only some things we can do associated with this funding. So we have to abide by the Home Investment Partnership Grant rules, similar to our other home funding. However, with this particular pot of money, we'll eventually be able to do a little bit more, such as supporting some nonprofit service agency operation costs as one example that we might eventually be able to do with it. This agreement that you have in front of you is only to accept some funds. A portion of the $10.4 million is only to accept some of the funds for administrative and planning purposes. Think salaries and fringes of staff needed to help plan how we're going to use this $10.4 million over the next 10 years. And so what you'll see in the future is you'll see a plan as far as how to spend this money within the next year. You're going to see that plan within the next year in front of you for acceptance and application as far as how we're going to use the rest of the funding. So HUD just wants us to accept this funding so we can use staff time to support the planning and development of the larger plan. And there will be more good conversations to come on how we'll be using those future funds.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Gingell?
Yeah, and excuse me for my ignorance, but maybe you can just keep it in like summary bullet points so I get it. But I like the free money. My concern is it going through HUD. What's that?
No such thing as free money.
Well, let me get there. There. My concern is that as it routes through HUD, does that then start committing us in Oakland County to certain things relative to investments in neighborhoods? How else could I say it? Normalization of neighborhoods and things of that nature?
Well, for this particular pot of money, I know with our regular home investment partnership grant, there is a 25% local match commitment. With this $10.4 million from Home ARP, there is no local match commitment for this additional funding. As far as what we're allowed to do with this money, we have options such as rental housing development and or preservation for affordable rental housing development. Perhaps we could decide to do tenant-based rental assistance. We could even look to expand additionally our housing counseling services and homelessness prevention services, as well as perhaps the non-congregate shelter development. So as far as HUD has published a CPD notice for if you want to do any one of these or dedicate funding to any one of these particular subgroups. These are the rules, these are the boundaries that you have to abide by when you do that. And so there's particular requirements we have to meet with how we expend those funds, but I'm not aware of any additional neighborhood stabilization requirements within that CPD notice.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, if I can. So I'll talk less cryptic. I mean, and this is just my opinion. I'm not looking for a political debate. I'm just going to state my opinion. The reality is there's groups that are looking at communities and trying to understand their rules, bylaws, planning processes in an effort to normalize with, lower income housing and, take municipality A, we don't think you have enough, therefore you need more. and we're going to look at changing rules, policies, planning commission rights that are at a local level to help us assist make your town the way we'd like your town to look. And I don't support that at all. So I want to make sure that we're not taking a step here with $10 million to start funding those efforts that get communities to the place where they lose local control and local ability to manage, plan, and execute their communities independent of county, state, and local governments to the extent possible. I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman?
Thank you, and I agree with your comments, Mike. But right now, this money is just being accepted, $500 and some thousand. The money's to be used for staffing and planning for the future. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Then the plan will come back to us to approve on how to spend this money.
Yes, so for our citizen participation planning process, we have to solicit input from the public. We have to meet with our Citizen Advisory Council, some of you who sit on that advisory council, and solicit input from that advisory council for how we might want to go about using the money within the framework allowable under the home ARP guidelines. And then the application and the acceptance of that future funding and that additional funding will come through this body, through this process for approval and acceptance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, prompt the vote, please.
Gingell?
No.
You have 7 yeas, 1 nay.
All right, motion carries. Thank you, Shane. That concludes our regular business. We move on to public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to comment?
Yes, of course I do.
Up. Come on down.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name's Catherine Kennedy from Lake Orion, and I appreciate that there was actually some decent discussion that went on with the HUD items. I actually am very concerned about what's happening in my local neighborhood, and I appreciate Mr. Gingell voting against that proposal, because what I see with my own eyes is we are destroying our woods, we are destroying our natural areas, and creating blight. Creating blight. We have so many extra nursing homes that have been shoved into Lake Orion where we don't have the capacity need for it. We have so many apartments that are programmed to go in, and I noticed that Mr. Shane said it, rental housing development was one of the things they could use this $10 million for. Guess what? I oppose destroying my community and pushing blight into it, and that is actually what's going on. I am actually going to take the initiative and get citizens to do my own inventory of real estate, both apartments that are unoccupied and already existing, and the businesses that are empty completely. We've lost, as of June of last year, which is the first update I got because Mr. Gingell had requested it back then, 25% of the businesses in Oakland County no longer existed post-COVID. Now, for all of those in government that haven't had a real job, that understand that the only way government is funded is by the private sector employment that takes the money out of their checks, not the cash workers. Private sector employees are what fund 100% of our government. There is no government jobs created. Yeah, they get appointed, but the money to pay for it all comes from the citizens. And the last Democratic president that comprehended that the more government takes from the citizen, the less the citizens has was John F. Kennedy. Just saying. If you look at historical, you can see tax and spend policies throughout history have been proven not to work. They not only don't work, they create recessions. This entire dilemma that we're in is self-created. We actually had, for the first time in my lifetime, energy independence. anybody that isn't old enough doesn't realize that we were at a point in, I think, the 70s, maybe 60s, where the Middle East controlled whether we had oil or gas to be able to operate our heat or our cars. And there were times when there were long lines and you could not get gasoline at a station because there was a problem with the boats getting out of the controlled area. I forget the right word, but they controlled our economy. Now we're in a position where Russia is destroying Ukraine, and all we had to do was not destroy our own infrastructure and our own oil and gas that is produced more effectively than any other country in the world. And the Paris Accord actually will tell you that if you want to read the green energy. Paris Accord knows you cannot operate our country without oil and gas. So why are we paying our enemies to provide what we need to operate as a corporation, as a country? It's totally beyond comprehension. So anytime we take money from the federal government when they have an agenda that is contrary to the best interests of citizens, we need to be voting no 100% of the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Welcome back.
Hi, yep. You see two women here. I'd like to let you know that we represent hundreds of other people that can't make it here. And that's what we're speaking for, a contingent of the population and your constituents. And I wanted to say that I was very encouraged by the program that the sheriffs presented, being proactive instead of reactive, offense as opposed to defense. The cost in terms of money and lives is much less, I'm certain. The decisions made with clear heads and more transparency and following the established rules will be easier to implement when not working in response to an emergency. Like the Oxford situation, suspend the rules, do this, do that, get this money to them right away. And even the lady from Oxford came and sat in this very chair and said, you know, do this according to your rules and regulations. Don't be suspending rules to accomplish something. And so the proactivity of setting this thing up ahead of time with the sheriffs and going into the communities, I'm saddened that it's only 2 of 12 yet, but I'm encouraged that their intention is to go further. And, you know, interestingly enough, I know you can't mix pots of money like that, but I think that that is an extremely important expenditure as compared with trying, like Mrs. Kennedy mentioned, to prepare more housing for who? I don't want to be a magnet for third world countries to bring people in illegally and then have them, Oakland County is a place to go. I mean, I know poor people who know exactly where to go to get their food, and they've been doing it for a long time. I also have a friend who was divorced from a physician and had to go on welfare. But she stayed on it for a certain period of time. It was a safety net. She went in her neighborhood, put out flyers so that she would clean houses, and now she has her own very lucrative business. And so, you know, I would like things available as a temporary safety net to people rather than a way of life that they can pass down to future generations and, you know, come into our country and into our county with the magnet of free money. Like the commissioners said, it isn't free. It comes from me. It comes from you. And so I really want us to think carefully about setting up a program that the first pot of money is spent on setting up the program, when we have other things in communities that we could be funding, and maybe not with that money, but with the mentality of let's fund what works. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? All right, public comment is closed. There is no other business to come before this committee, so I will adjourn at 11:50. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.